Okay, so we should be up and recording. And, all right, before we get started, are there any questions, issues, concerns, general in nature that you want to bring up now? All right, everyone's good, everyone's curious, everyone's excited, right? Shakespeare, how can you not be excited? A little fearful perhaps, good. You'll get over that, I promise. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up the course outline and put it up on the screen, and we're going to go through it in detail. And one of the issues, and I do this every class, and it's an important one, the course outlines we have here at TAV are involved. They're lengthy. There's a lot of words. It's how many pages. It's big. I teach at Concordia, and my course outlines at Concordia are 1 to 2 pages long. Here, we're very involved. And that's not a bad thing. It's actually, I kind of like it, because what I encourage you to do, as basically what we're going to do right now, is to go through it in detail. And this speaks directly to developing and improving your critical reading skills. All right, and you're going to need them in this class. Right, we're dealing with Shakespeare. And you're going to have to be attentive to your ability to understand the text, and to know when you do not understand that you have to spend more time with it. Right? And when it comes to the course outline, you know, everything you need to know is in there. So okay, does everyone see this? Is everyone looking at the course outline now? Yes? I'm going to take that as a yes. I can see a couple of faces. Thank you, Kiffy. You've got your camera on, so I'm going to be looking towards you, you know, to make sure that, you know, everyone's awake. Okay, let me put this down so I can. All right, let's try this. All right, so we know what the course is. We're dealing. Wait, is this the right one? No, this is the wrong one. You guys gotta start playing. This is my other class. Okay, hold on. Let me go back. I just got too many windows open. Hold on, I'll find it. I know it's up there somewhere. There we go. That's better. Okay, everyone sees this? Yes? Yes? Good.
Yes.
Right. Okay, so English adapted to program. What does that mean? Anyone think about that? I mean, we saw 103 as literary themes, we have literary genres, we have introduction to college English. This is English adapted to program.
Does it have to do with our main program?
Technically, it does. I mean, it's one of these courses. This is a course that's mandated by the government that everyone in SAGEF has to go through. I have colleagues who teach over at Dawson and Abbott, and some of them have been there for like 10 years plus. And it's one of those courses that is somewhat confusing, because how do you adapt English literature and writing and English communication specifically to a program when we have 33 students who are in a variety of different programs, right? If you were all coming out of the same program, early childhood care, whatever it may be, sure, then we could adapt the whole course to that program, but we can't do that because you're coming from multiple different places. So a lot of that, what that suggests and what that means is that you have to be, what I encourage you to do, and the way I've designed the course is so that you can be thinking about the particular themes and ideas that we're going to be encountering through Shakespeare, and think about how they relate to your program. Now, for some of you, that might be easier than for others, depending on what program you're in. What we're going to be doing before this class is over is the assignment I'm going to have you do is you're going to write for me a brief description of the program you're in and why you're in that program. Right? That's going to help me sort through where everyone's at. And that'll hopefully help me to design as we proceed specifics that will relate to the multiple different programs you're in. But you want to be thinking about this, what we're discussing in this course, as it relates to your program. And that's where I'm going to need your feedback. Okay? What I'm hoping to do is then, certainly by the time we get to the final exam, is to be able to have a question for you in the final exam that will lend itself to the possibility of you talking about your program through the themes that we are going to encounter in the Shakespeare plays. Now, that may sound a little confusing at this point. It will become clear. We've got 15 weeks, okay? And that's what we're going to build towards, right? But and it'll be a lot easier with your feedback, right? So I'll be constantly encouraging that. The rest of this is pretty basic stuff. We know it. Here we're going to get, well, again, you've all seen this, but I want to go over it because I don't want there to be any confusion. We have 3 plays that we're addressing, the 3 Shakespeare tragedies.
Sorry to disturb you. Where do we get the book?
Oh, good question. Yeah, the books have been ordered through the school, and they can be bought at the school. So for those of you who are in programs where you have labs and you're going to the school anyways, that's really convenient. For those of you who don't, it's less convenient. The books are available at the school. I strongly encourage you to get them. They're really inexpensive. They're all under $10. And the editions of these Shakespeare plays that I've ordered are the Signet editions. I find them to be the most affordable, but also being really thorough. They have annotations that really help you with the language, great introductions and source notes and so on. You can find them, again, it's the Signet edition. You can find them if you're near a secondhand bookstore or Chapters or an Indigo. They're available, readily available there. They should be, I called yesterday, they're there. They've all arrived.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so you can pick them up there. What we're going to be doing in terms of when we're going over it in class is I'm going to be putting it up on the screen. And those of you who've had me last semester, you know what I'm talking about. And we're going to go through it in detail on the screen. Now, what I'm going to put up on the screen may not be the same edition as the Signet. That's okay. There are going to be some subtle differences, but the gist will be there. Okay? But it's important that it's vitally important that you have a copy. So pick it up at the school or anywhere that you can. Worst case scenario, all these plays are readily available online. Okay? And why I'm emphasizing this is, as you can see from here, week 2, which is Monday, we're going to start talking about Act 1. And what I'm asking you to do is to read Act 1 by Monday, to the best of your ability. Okay, but it's really to your disadvantage if you haven't done the readings when we get into it, because what I'm going to be when we start doing this on Monday, I'm going to be putting the text up. I'm not going to go through it word by word because there's not enough time. It's too long. I'm going to be focusing in on certain areas of the text and going into it in great detail. I'm big on detailed reading. All right. So it is really to your advantage to have read through the assigned readings at that point. Otherwise, you will be lost, especially with Shakespeare. And that disadvantage increases many-fold when you're going to have to do your assignment, which I'll be giving during the class. Okay. So as you know from the course outline, the assignments, the in-class assignments, you see here marks awarded 2.5 and all the way through, except for the days when we have the midterm and the final. The total accumulation of those in-class assignments is 30% of your final mark. Okay. If you are doing the reading and you are attentive, you should have no problem doing well. The in-class assignments will fluctuate between a focus on the text. It could be a general single question, ask you to write a paragraph or two. It could be multiple choice questions to ensure that you have been attentive to detail. And again, this is mainly because many of you have not taken the exit exam, and we will be spending time talking about writing and grammar and so on. Some of the in-class assignments will be related to that, where there could be grammar exercises to do as well. Almost pretty much every in-class assignment will more likely than not be in the second half of the class. And the main idea related to those assignments will be discussed in the class. So if you're not in the class or you're not attentive in the class, you're less likely to do well on that assignment. Okay? And what I'm emphasizing here is come to class and be attentive. Again, since the vast majority of you don't have your cameras on, it's one of the great disadvantages for me as a teacher. Those of you who have had me before in the classroom, I feed off the class. I see your faces. I know if something's working. If it's not working, I modify what I'm doing to make sure that I have your attention, that you're engaged, and hopefully motivated. I'm at a great disadvantage because as it stands now, I can only see two of you. But I'm glad the two of you are there. It makes a big difference, helps me. But so understand that it's important that if when we are discussing these texts in the class, you're not following, you're not understanding, you're getting lost. I can usually see that if I'm in the classroom and I can see your faces, I can see that look like, what's going on? I can't do that here in this environment. You have to ask the questions, okay? So again, we'll go through this, we'll come back and we'll talk about these things in a little more detail. And I will talk in more detail about the in-class assignments as we go through this. What I want you to note here, though, is the reading schedule. We're doing 3 Shakespeare plays. For Monday, Act 1, the following Monday, Act 2. But notice here when we get to week 4, we're combining Acts 3 and 4. You want to anticipate that. Ideally, you'll sit down this weekend. You'll say, okay, I'm going to read Act 1. You're going to become so enthralled with Othello that you'll finish the whole play. In any case, which will give you the opportunity to read it a second time as we go through it, which is ideal. I cannot emphasize that enough. If you can read through these acts and the play in itself twice, huge advantage. Again, you can get so much more. The first reading, for those of you who are not familiar with Shakespeare, you may find when you first open it up that the language is different. And we're going to be discussing that in detail when we go over it on Monday. You have to get accustomed to the language. We're also looking at plays. So most of you have probably are more familiar with short stories or novels from the English classes you've taken in the past. plays are different and they need to be approached in a different way. We don't have omniscient narrators telling us what the characters are thinking, right? It's all dialogue. And that requires a certain kind of critical thinking and critical reading in order to understand what's transpiring, not just in terms of the action that is unfolding, but in terms of the psychological developments of the characters. Again, something that is usually told to us by that narrator when we're reading novels and short stories. Okay, so again, those of you who are less familiar with reading plays or Shakespeare, be prepared. I'm anticipating it. I've taught Shakespeare in a number of classes, both here and at the university. So I know the challenges that are involved, and I do take that into account. Everyone rest assured. My goal here is to guide you through this. Okay, and we will take it at whatever pace is necessary. But that being said, you want to keep up with the reading. Once you fall behind, and you know this, but once you fall behind in the reading, it's going to be really hard to catch up. Right? You're all taking other courses. You're all going to have lots of reading to do in your other courses and so on. But you really want to stay on top of this. Otherwise, you'll find yourself having to catch up quickly. And that is what I don't want, because if you try to read Shakespeare too quickly, you're going to miss a lot that is essential, especially with what we're dealing with in this course. So we're doing the first 4 weeks on Othello. Then we're going to Julius Caesar. It's the same structure for that. It's 4 weeks where we're combining Acts 3 and 4. We'll talk more why I chose to combine those two. The emphasis on Acts 1 and 2 really it sets the foundation for the play, and then Acts 3 and 4 really build towards the climactic action of Act 5. All right, and by the time you master Acts 1 and 2, 3 and 4 will fall into place. Should fall into place more easily. All right, and we'll see. Again, sounds very vague and general at this point. You'll have a clearer picture once we get into the text. So Julius Caesar is the second play that we're going to be reading, and then we go to King Lear. Now, note with King Lear, I don't combine anything. A week on Act 1, a week on Act 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, 2 reasons. One, Lear's longer. And 2, and I would argue most importantly, Lear is more challenging. I would argue that Lear is Shakespeare's greatest play. It is extraordinarily involved. It is so layered. All right, that's why we're doing it third, so that we build towards it. That's not to say that Julius Caesar and Othello are easy. But I do the emphasis on, because everything, the themes and ideas that we are going to be exploring in Othello and Julius Caesar are all in Lear on steroids. Okay? So I designed it this way as a means by which we can build basically towards Lear. It's just a stupendous play. And as I said, very, very much layered. Note here on week 8, we have the midterm exam scheduled. I think you've been informed, and as things stand now, the midterm, unlike last semester, the midterm and the final exam are not going to be take-homes. And you are going to be asked to come to the college and take the exam at the college. That's how things stand for now. Okay, if there's any change to that, obviously we'll all be informed. So that's now, and I put it at week 8. Whether we'll actually be on week 8, I'm not sure, because the logistics involved, if they're going to be bringing all the students in for midterm exams, It has to be designed in a way that we don't have too many students at the college at one time, obviously. We have to maintain that social distancing and everything else. So at this point, it's probably tentative. We may have to do it on one of the other days. I don't know. All right, but we will have that midterm somewhere in this period. Whatever day the midterm falls on, rest assured that the question or questions that you will have for the midterm will only deal with what we've covered in class. Okay? And I'll obviously talk to you about that in more detail as we get closer to it. The nature of the midterm is the same as in the final as it stands now. Especially, normally I would probably mix it up in terms of maybe having multiple different questions, short answer questions, and so on. But because so many of you have not taken the exit exam, it will probably be, you'll write an essay, an in-class essay of approximately 750 words, something like that, for the midterm. Okay?
Do we get to use our notes for the midterm?
Yes. I mean, I have no problem with that. Bring your books, everything. But I have to, I'm hesitant because if it's going to be run by the university, the college, I don't know what restrictions they may impose when you're all coming in there. I don't see there being a problem. For me, no, you have all your notes, all your books and everything else. I mean, you have 4 hours to write it, and that gives you, no one's trying to trick you here. I want you to be able to really engage the text and go at it. So as far as I'm concerned, you bring whatever you want. But I have heard rumors that they're going to conduct these exams in a very formal way, in which case they may put some restrictions. I don't know at this point. As soon as I know, I will confirm that with you. Okay? If there are restrictions and you can't bring your notes or the book or anything like that, I will take that into account. I will design the exam to ensure that it accommodates those restrictions. I am all about giving you guys the best opportunity to produce your best work. Okay? But what it will require, and again, those of you who've had me before know this, is a properly structured and well-written essay. That's with thesis statement, topic sentences per paragraph, 5-paragraph structure, basic stuff, right? Which is exactly the type of stuff you're going to need for that exit exam. And we'll talk about that as we get closer to the exam once we have a firm date on that. Same thing with the final. As it stands now, it will be during our last class. If they change that and push it into the exam period and schedule it differently, again, because of the logistics involved in maintaining social distancing and so on. Okay, last semester we didn't have to deal with this. It was all take home. That certainly that I did, as those of you had me know. So we have to see how this evolves, but rest assured, everything I do will be designed in relation to whatever guidelines we have to follow. Okay? So let's take a look at this course description. And I think this is really important, okay? Obviously. This course is designed to develop students' proficiency in producing well-structured texts that will prepare them for the writing challenges they will encounter in their chosen careers. Whether you plan on going on to university, whether you plan on going straight out into the job market, the idea here is writing, right? It says producing well-structured texts. Yes, we're writing essays here, but what we're working on is an understanding of communication, written communication. And when we talk about written communication, that can involve anything from writing an essay on King Lear to writing a memo at work or an email and things like that. And when you're in the workplace or you're in a formal place, your ability to write without grammatical error to be articulate, clear, concise, to be able to communicate properly can often be the difference between advancement in your career and non-advancement, right? These are basic communication skills that really cross over from any discipline. We need to emphasize this idea of communication more and more in the educational system because it's vital. Because you go into an environment, if a CEO asks you to write a memo and it's full of grammatical errors, that CEO is never going to ask you to write that memo again, right? So that's what we're working. That's what it means producing well-structured text. We are working with essays, but all the tools that you learn and all the ideas that you learn in terms of how to communicate, how to make an argument, how to be persuasive in your argument, all those things lend themselves to every aspect of written communication that you're going to be doing throughout your careers. I'm not used to talking so much, so it's already getting to me. And those of you who've had me before know how much I love to talk. So I gotta find my lozenges. Okay. An important aim of this course is to show that academic writing, literary criticism, business writing, scientific reporting, and journalism are not wholly distinct disciplines, but this is what I was just saying, right? But depend on the same criteria of clearly formulated purpose, awareness of audience, exactness of economy and expression, and internal cohesion that characterize all good writing. That's a very long sentence. There's a lot there. One of the keys, and you'll see all this will come together as we discuss essay writing and so on. One of the more important ones here, though, is, there it is. This is really important in two ways. One is, yes, you have to be aware of your audience to know how you are going to disseminate the information you want to disseminate. The way you're going to present an argument or information to a high school student is different than what you're going to do to university students or to scholars in the field or your field and so on. That goes without saying. You want to always be aware of your audience. You also want to be thinking, especially because we're dealing with theater and plays, which have an audience, you want to be thinking of what the audience awareness is of, yes, Shakespeare, but more importantly, the characters in the play. And this, again, will sound a little vague at this point, but you'll see once we get into the play. We are seeing in the play a number of different characters who are communicating with each other. How they communicate with one person, because that particular audience is expecting a certain thing or is of a certain type, versus how they communicate the same information to someone else, especially when they're trying to be persuasive, and in the case of our plays, when they are trying to manipulate the situation to achieve their goals. It's important to watch how the characters are aware of their audiences. And that will help you understand the fundamental need to know your audience when you write and when you communicate. Right? I'm big on audience. Know your audience. No matter, and this spills over not just in terms of reading plays and writing English essays and so on. It's very much vital for in the workplace. Right? You have to know, and you have to know who you're dealing with very quickly. Right? So that you know that this is the way to present it. Right? It's you know, if you're emailing your friends, you know, it's hi. Or you know, just your salutation will be different than when if you're going to address your boss, a CEO, or anything like that. And you have to be aware of that, because if you get too familiar with an audience who's expecting more formality, it could have a very detrimental effect. all right? Again, always what I'm doing, and you'll notice this, I'm always going to try to relate it to your program and your future. All right? I don't know how many of you plan on going to study English literature at the university and become Shakespearean scholars. Probably not many of you. All right? But the things we learned here, and I want you to always remember this, have a practical application no matter what field you go into. I mean, if it didn't, then what's the point? Right? Remember, you always want to be asking, what's the purpose of taking this course? What am I gaining from this? And I want you to ask that. And if you're sitting there saying, why am I studying Shakespeare? How can Shakespeare possibly help me with what I'm going to be doing in the future in business or whatever it is you're studying? I ask you to be patient and attentive and let me demonstrate to you how it will. Because I firmly believe that. If I didn't believe it, I wouldn't do what I do. Okay? So consequently, the course will be divided between understanding argument through analysis and practicing argument through composition. Now, don't be misled by the word argument. Okay? Argument in this case does not mean, confrontation. If you make an argument, you are arguing for one view over another one. In the case of Shakespeare, in the case of literary studies, you are going to take a position vis-a-vis the text. You are going to interpret the text in a certain way. You're going to base that interpretation on evidence that is in the text, concrete evidence from the text. You have to have the evidence to make an argument. You can't willy-nilly out of the blue say, I think that Othello is a happy guy. Okay, fine. You want to make that argument, you have to have evidence to support that argument. It's as simple as that. An argument is taking a position and arguing for that position, making your case, supplying the evidence that consolidates your position. Okay, it does not have to be confrontational. It can be, because especially when we're studying literature, there will be people who may disagree with your position on Othello. Okay? And so you're going to sit there and you're going to argue why your position is correct. The one thing you have to remember with literature, Shakespeare, whatever literature we're studying, there are very few absolutes here. And I know that's frustrating for many of you. Okay? This is not math. Okay? And when we're dealing in literature, especially the complexities of someone like Shakespeare, there are multiple avenues into an understanding, and there are multiple layered meanings. You need to extract your understanding of it, and this is where it comes back to your program. You can approach it through what you've been learning through your program and see elements of that in the characters in the play. And then you draw on the evidence at your disposal to make that argument. It doesn't matter whether I agree or disagree with you. You just have to be able to supply the evidence to support your argument. There's been many times where I have read essays that have been written for me, whether it's at the university or at the college, where I have disagreed. But that person still gets an A because they made their argument well. They supplied the evidence that is arguably substantiating their claims. You make a claim, you need to substantiate it. It's as simple as that, right? But you have to be careful, because much too often claims are made without supplying the evidence. Claims are made with the idea, well, everyone knows this. No, you got to be very careful with that. You have to almost scientifically supply, think of it scientifically, supply the evidence. You're going to say Othello is a happy guy. I want to see quotes from the text that demonstrate that he's happy. And the key to this is to remember, because there are few, if any, absolutes, you want to anticipate disagreement. Your argument, your position will be much more solid if you've anticipated counter positions. Anticipate them and address them in your essay. Not by necessarily saying, I know some people will say this, but in essence, that's what you want to be thinking. If you're thinking, if you write down all the counter arguments when you're preparing your outlines for your essay, or when you're taking your notes for the course, if you're saying, you know, okay, I think Othello's happy, but I could see why people will say he's not happy because I see this evidence here. You weigh the two, all the evidence, and then you take a position, and then you make your argument. Okay? Students will learn how to perform a close reading. Those of you who've had me before, you know what that means. I am big on close, detailed readings. No generalities, details. And an analysis of the rhetorical strategies used by Shakespeare in developing his plot and characters, and how in turn those characters engage rhetorical and persuasive strategies of their own in relation to the themes. I'll talk about the themes in a second. This is very important. We're going to talk about rhetorical strategies, and I will have a couple of classes where we'll get into, you know, details involving logical fallacies and deductive reasoning and syllogisms and so on. These are rhetorical strategies that are employed in the text that we're reading, that are employed every time you write an essay. I promise you, even if you're not aware of the rhetorical strategies you're using them. We're going to talk about that. And I want you to be attentive to them in the text, not just in general what Shakespeare's doing, but because of the nature of that it's a play, how the characters, you see this especially in Julius Caesar, how the characters employ these rhetorical strategies to be persuasive and to make their arguments. Remember, there's a difference between argumentation and persuasiveness. There is an element of persuasiveness in an argumentation, but if you take persuasiveness to an extreme, it loses its argumentative qualities. Think of politics, those of you who follow politics. Okay, they're saying things without supplying the evidence to support them. They're just trying to persuade, and that's when they engage in these rhetorical strategies of pathos, ethos, and logos. And we will talk about those. Don't be intimidated by those terms. They're pretty basic. They're just the terms that developed by Aristotle that we will be looking at. And you'll see, once you get familiar with them, you'll see it everywhere. Then how these rhetorical and persuasive strategies of their own in relation to the themes of ethics, freedom, authority, and justice. These are very important. I would certainly be highlighting these in my course outline. If we have a paper copy, my marker or whatever, I would certainly be writing these down. This is, and these are the themes that we're going to be exploring in the Shakespeare plays, and these are the themes that I would argue are, in some way or another, are relative and relatable to your chosen fields, to your programs. I want you to be thinking about that. Yes, we're going to explore them through the characters developed by Shakespeare, but these are universal themes. And they are complex themes, much more complex than we necessarily think. These terms are bantered around all the time, especially, you know, during this very challenging time we've been living through for the last 6 months. I want us to explore these themes in much greater detail. And I think that you'll see that it will be applicable to your program, but also applicable very much to our situation today and these challenges that we're all encountering big time. So keep those four in mind. Through interpretive practices and critical analysis of the plays, students will evaluate these themes and will develop theories regarding how these themes relate to their chosen program of study. Students will be experimenting with appropriate forms of discursive writing, and attention will be given to grammar, structure, and content. That goes without saying. Again, those of you who've had me before, you know my emphasis on this. All right, and we will continually approach those things. Okay, questions up to now? We're good?
Hello, Derek. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, I couldn't be from the beginning. That's why it's my question regarding the stories. Are we going to buy the book in college or?
Yeah, the book has been ordered by the college. I called yesterday. They've all arrived, so you can pick them up at the college. Now,
Okay.
as I mentioned, these are they're not expensive. They're under $10. They're available at the college. They're available pretty much at any bookstore, both Chapters Indigo, like new books, or secondhand bookstores if you're near a secondhand bookstore. These are easily obtainable, and it's important to get it soon because we are going to be dealing with Act 1 on Monday. Okay?
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hold on, I gotta.
No more questions from.
Okay. Just how do I stop? Oh, okay, clear. There we go. And then that. Okay, that's what I want to do. So this chat. See, someone is intimidating terminology so far. I'm glad you put that up there. If it's intimidating in terminology, see now you're going to have intimidating language coming with Shakespeare, I promise. Good, because you will overcome that intimidating factor, I promise, and you will understand it, and we'll parse it, peel it, break it up, and get a clearer understanding of the terminology I may be using or the terminology and language that Shakespeare does. And that's really going to, I would argue, very much develop and improve your critical thinking, critical reading, and critical analysis skills. It's good to be intimidated a little bit once in a while. I get intimidated all the time, and that just drives me to, I don't want to be intimidated anymore, so I'm going to go figure it out. Try to, in any case. Okay? But of course, don't forget, as we proceed, if you're still feeling intimidated or lost or confused in any way, you got to ask me. You got to bring it up. Okay? Bring it up in the class, email me, message me, whatever. That's what I'm here for. And, please keep that in mind. Someone from my class last semester, I would imagine. Yes, Billy Budd stories. Someone was asking, is the language similar to something like Billy Budd, which was a story that I taught last semester by Herman Melville. No, it's different, but it can be equally as challenging. No, let me qualify that. No, it is easier because of the nature of the play, because it's dialogue. It won't be as dense as those of you who were in my class last semester had to encounter with Melville. So, but it will pose a different set of challenges. So the question here is for assignment or in-class questions. Are we going to be asked some question about the understanding Shakespeare's English? Well, not necessarily directly, but in general, yes. You're going to have to get a grasp of what Shakespeare's doing with the language. Don't worry about it. That's what I'm here for, is to, don't worry, the first couple of in-class assignments, I'm not going to ask you to, give you a list of Shakespeare terms and ask you to, explain what they mean. I understand the challenges here. The idea is to, and those of you who have taken a course with me with Shakespeare before, right? Almost every time that when you first encounter it, it's like, oh my God, I don't even know what's going on. I can't understand it. And by the time we get to Acts 3 and 4, even 2, it starts to make sense because you're familiarizing yourself with it. And we are going over it together in detail. That's why I strongly recommend the edition of the book that I ordered. It has really great annotations. So for every word that you're unfamiliar with, it translates it, if you will. It gives you a more current meaning of the word. And I'll be doing the same thing with you. But it really, I can't emphasize enough the importance of having that text. Okay? All right. Okay, so just before we go on with the outline, I want to just return again to how we're going to structure the classes. And you'll see that there's a purpose why I'm bringing this up now. In general, what I'm looking to do, and I may have said this earlier, but I want to be really clear. We're going to start at 8:30. I really do like to start on time, even though it's early. And go for about an hour and a half to 10:30. No, to 10. And then we take a lengthy break. Rather than taking a bunch of short breaks, 10-minute break here, 10-minute break there, I would prefer, if you have great objections, you can consult with me. I would prefer we take a nice lengthy break, 20 minutes to half an hour, somewhere around 10. That way we can, those who woke up quickly and dashed to the computer can get breakfast, whatever, there's time. And then when we come back at, say, 10:30, we go for another hour and a half. And instead of taking another break, we end earlier. So the idea would be to end around 12. Okay. Now, if you have objections, you can bring them up now if you want, or you can email me. But that's the general structure. That's how I structured the in-class when we were back in the good old days when we were in the classroom. That's how I structured it there. I think it works well. I think it's necessary to have a lengthy break, especially when we're in this platform. It's very hard to stay attentive. It's easier in the classroom. Just the dynamic is so different. That's how I'd like to proceed with the classes. The class will be split into like basically 2 classes that way. We will, in the first half, almost always be focused on the text. It'll be up on the screen like this outline is up on the screen, and I will be going through sections of it in detail and, of course, addressing all your questions and concerns. When we come back from the break, we will probably, to some degree, continue with the text, depending on how much we accomplished in the first half. But then we will segue into issues of grammar, writing, thesis statements, all that stuff. We'll be having some lectures and discussions about rhetoric, rhetorical skills, persuasion, argumentation, and we will be having that quiz. Okay? Now, when I give the quiz, whether it's going to be at the beginning of the second half, whether it's going to be at the end of the second half, whether it's going to be maybe once in a while in the first half, that will depend on how I feel things are going. Okay? So I can't be more concrete than that for now. Those quizzes, as it stands now, okay, and I'm going to be really firm with this. If you miss those quizzes, they can't be made up. Yeah, I've tend to be very lenient in the past with these things, and I've been told I should not be so lenient. Okay, so you need to be here for them. Obviously, if there's a valid reason and so on, we'll make arrangements. But you need, and that's, you know, it's only 2.5% of your final mark. They add up. Remember, the total of those in-class assignments is 30%. That all being said, I would suggest this is a good time for a break. Remember, this is going to be a bit shorter. It's an introductory class. It's our first one. I'm sure many of you are tired, not used to getting up this early. What I'd like when we take our break is you stay in the Zoom meeting, okay? That way, if some of you want to talk to me, we can do something like that as well. But rather, if you log out, again, I'm not technologically inclined. If you get out, if there's any trouble getting back in, that's going to be really frustrating for you. Okay? So, I mean, you can turn your cameras off and whatnot. But when we do this, and this is why I'm doing it now, because it's a bit of an experiment, right, to see how it goes. I give a set time when we need to be back. Because again, we may come back and I may give the quiz immediately. All that is to emphasize to be back on time. Okay? So I suggest we take a break now. It's 9:37. We're back here at 10 o'clock. Is that good?
Good.
Okay?
Good. Yes.
And the breaks will be longer when we go, because we're going to come back at 10. I'm going to finish going through the outline, and then I'm just going to have you guys write something for me very quickly. So we should be done 11-ish, something like that, I would guess, okay? If not earlier, all right? But just this one time. Just this one time. Are we good?
Good.
Okay, so I'll see you all back here at 10 o'clock.
Okay.
All right.
Hi, Kima.
I muted myself. See you. Do you have a question?
Oh yeah, because I'm kind of worried because I did my exit exam like 5 years ago,
Okay.
and I did English class like around that same time. So like to me, I'm starting back fresh.
Okay.
So I'm just like, I
What's your-
might ask a lot of questions along the way. I might forget how to organize and stuff.
I have, I should have mentioned this, and I'll mention this when we get back, when everyone gets back. I have a lot of documents that I'll be posting on Omnibox that speaks directly to structure, essay writing structure, and all those things. Those who have had me in the past know that I'm going to give you a lot of information. Since you've done it before, I think it's going to be like riding a bike. I think you'll remember it, but you can contact me at any time with your questions or concerns. Oh, and I need to remind, I'm going to be holding office hours
Okay.
on a regular basis. I haven't determined, I have to look at my schedule. And of course, if those office hours are at times that you have other classes or you can't make it, you just contact me. We'll find a time and we will do a one-on-one Zoom meeting.
Okay.
Okay, but you'll see, I have some, I think they'll be very helpful, and I'll probably post them this weekend, some documents very specific to the writing process,
Okay.
if that's your concern, okay? And just ask the questions. That's what I'm here for.
Okay.
All right?
Okay then. Thanks.
We'll see you in a few minutes.
Okay.
So back to recording. So let's go and continue through the syllabus. This shouldn't take too long. There we are. So I'm not going to read through all the, I mean, you should look this over because it really explains, where the emphasis, what I'm going to be focusing on and so on. But a lot of it is a bit wordy. A lot of this is not me. This is from the standard as you can see right here, it's the ministerial objectives for this course. This comes from the minister's office. All right, accurate recognition of specialized vocabulary and conventions. Talk about intimidating language. Accurate recognition of the characteristics of the form of discourse. Clear and accurate recognition of main ideas and structure. You know, it is to your advantage to read through this. Recognize that sometimes it becomes wordy and unnecessarily confusing. You know, basically, yes, you're going to be responsible, especially with Shakespeare, in parsing through the vocabulary, the words that are being used. We're going to do that together. The conventions of a play. Again, the emphasis with that for many of you will be, if you haven't studied plays before, it's a very different dynamic. And it's particular, again, to remember, a play is written to be performed, right? It's meant to be performed on stage. But it's also meant to be read, and we are very much focusing on the reading of the plays. And that's a different, it's really, it's a different approach, right? I mean, I've taught courses on Shakespeare where we study how the play would be performed. And we will touch on that. You can't avoid it. But our emphasis is really on treating the play as if it were a short story or if it were a novel. But of course, its format, its structure is quite different, and its delivery of information methodology is quite different as well, since it's dialogue. It's people speaking, as opposed to the narrator telling us what they're doing. So, you know, that's something we have to navigate through as we go. That being said, I will be showing clips from productions of the plays, and I think that's going to be, you know,
Useful, yeah. Great.
Useful and a lot of fun, because there's many different versions. There's and how, you know, often, and this is something that you want to keep in mind while we're reading the plays. How do you deliver that? We're just looking at the word. Othello says this, Iago says that. But what you have to be able to do as you're reading through the play is, how is it said? Shakespeare doesn't give us all this, he says angrily, or he says as a joke.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge that we have is being able to see, is he serious? Is he joking? And often when you see different productions, and I will do this, I'll show the same scene, two different productions of the same scene, and you'll see how different interpretations of the play lead to a different way of the play's performance. We do the same thing when we're reading it. That's why we can have multiple interpretations, which then would flavor the way we look at the whole play. And that's fine. It's tricky, because you have to be sure that you're being accurate. It's tricky, but as long as you can support that type of interpretation, that type of reading of that character, then it's valid. There is some clips from a BBC production back from the 80s they recorded the Royal Shakespeare Company in England doing specific scenes and showing how the scenes can be interpreted in different ways. And I will bring in clips of that, because I don't know how many of you are familiar with Star Trek: The Next Generation, Jean-Luc Picard, or Gandalf, right? Ian McKellen, the actor, Ben Kingsley, actors that you are probably familiar with from everything from Lord of the Rings and Star Trek. But back in the early 80s, before they had become successful movie stars, they were part of the Royal Shakespeare Company. And you'll see them, much younger, showing different ways to interpret different scenes. Okay, and that's a big part of what we're going to be doing, and how we do that is by a close attentiveness to the language, and how the language speaks to the character and the psychological elements. And we're going to see a lot of psychological developments and bizarre behavior to a certain extent in these characters. These are some really rich and complex characters that Shakespeare has developed in these plays. And then we look at how that characterization relates to the action that the characters take. All right, and it goes without saying, you have to keep an open mind, because we want to try to understand, why do characters do what they do? We had someone who mentioned the Billy Budd story, a very difficult text that I taught last semester, but we were always looking, why are certain characters doing what they're doing? And we can't just drop off into simplicity such as, oh, they're just bad people. No, that's too easy. We have to look deeper, right? And you'll get a clear picture of that as we proceed. Communicating just back to this, communicating the forms of discourse appropriate to one or more fields of study, appropriate choice of tone and diction, correctly developed sentences. Correctly developed sentences is obvious. Clearly and coherently developed paragraphs, that's obvious. The appropriate choice of tone and diction, that comes back again to what I was talking about earlier in terms of knowing your audience. Okay, and you want to, not just in terms of your own writing, but you want to be thinking about this when you're looking at the characters and their tone and diction, their choice of words. Diction is choice of words. You know, why are they saying the things that they're saying in the way that they're saying them? What are they trying to achieve? There's always a purpose. There's always a purpose. Okay. I'm gonna have to put this down so we can see. So again, this is just the formal way that we have to put things into our outlines in terms of the hours and so on. You've seen this all before. I mean, it really depends on how the course goes, especially under the circumstances that we're doing this long distance learning. To identify the forms of rhetoric appropriate to the variety of discourse practices. Again, the emphasis on rhetoric. Don't be intimidated by the term at this stage, or do be intimidated, but don't worry, because I will be talking a fair amount about rhetorical devices. And you see we're utilizing them all the time, and characters in the plays are utilizing them all the time. To recognize descriptive frameworks appropriate to academic writing, discursive frameworks. It's the frameworks, it's structure, it's how you engage in formal writing, right? Because this is academic writing. So we want to always remember that we're not writing a blog when you're writing an essay in this class. You're not texting your friend. You are using an elevated language, an academic language, okay? And I mean, that should be fairly obvious, but I can tell you, even at the university, I've encountered, you know, a very informal approach, and that's not appropriate for what we're doing. Okay, we are writing academic essays. Again, this is pretty much the same things. You can look it over yourselves, recognize the general topic for sentences, recognize general specific phrases. This again speaks to both your writing, but also what you're reading. Okay. Learning activities, lectures, oral discourse, cooperative writing, learning. We're probably not going to do too much of that in this situation. Participation in class discussions, please, as much as possible. I implore you. In class presentations, we're not going to be doing that. Okay. I mean, it's part of the many, but again, that just doesn't lend itself to this situation that we're in. This is again repetitive. You can look it over yourself. This I want to look at a little more closely. Okay, these are things that I am focused on. And I'm not going to go into too much detail at this point, but sentence structure, those of you who've had me before, you know what I mean by that. Understanding, recognizing more than anything else when a sentence isn't a proper sentence. I'll get a better picture of where we're at as a class with that after you do your writing exercise for me today. That's one of the reasons I have you do it, so I can see what levels we're at, okay? Don't worry about the terminology too much, okay? We will spend time with grammar, but it's not a grammar course. And I know, as someone who's had to study grammar for a long time, that the terminology, grammatical terminology, that's intimidating. And I don't want you to be set off with it. We'll be concentrating on the basics, where it's more going to be about recognition than being able to identify the term that applies to that. I mean, we will have to look at, you will be familiar with terms like comma splices and phrasing and so on. But when we get to that, I'll keep that as simple as possible, okay? Paragraph structure, yes, you do need to know what a topic sentence is, and I am going to be really working on this because it seems to always be a bit of an issue, and I need to I need to really drill that in, that every paragraph starts with a topic sentence, okay? This idea of unity and coherency of content, it's very important, right? Your paragraphs are dealing with one subject. That subject is defined in the topic sentence. The topic sentence works as a guide to ensure that you're not deviating away from your topic, because once you deviate away from the topic of that paragraph, then chances are you need another paragraph for that topic. You can't have two major topics in one paragraph, all right? And that's about really recognizing. And we're going to talk about how to really help with that is the outlining process. And we will, in the next couple of weeks, I will be talking in detail about outlining. I have some documents that I'll be posting, some PowerPoints as well, to be sure that you're clear on what a paragraph is and how that needs to be addressed, and how we structure the paragraphs within an essay. You know, vocabulary is, you know, I encourage you to use a thesaurus if you choose, but you have to be careful, be sure that you're using a thesaurus correctly. Often, I mean, I use a thesaurus, you know, when I'm writing, if I'm using the same word too much, so it becomes awkward, I want to find, well, what's another word I could use for that word? And when you look in a thesaurus, and there's electronic thesauruses and so on, you often find a number of choices. What you want to be careful of is don't pick the word that you are least familiar with, because it'll stand out. It won't cohere with the rest of your vocabulary. Okay, but using the thesaurus and finding other words does increase your vocabulary. So you'll find yourself, you may use a word that you're not familiar with, and it works well. The more you use it, the more it becomes naturally part of your writing process. Okay? Editing and proofreading, you know, so vitally important. And you may say, well, okay, yes, if we have 2 weeks to write an essay, we have plenty of time to edit it and proofread it. But what are we supposed to do when it's an exam? We only have 4 hours. Well, only 4 hours? 4 hours is a long time. And I will talk to you at length about strategies that I employed when I take exams. And I have a major PhD exam coming up in the next couple months, where you still very much have time to edit and proofread, even in the pressure cooker of a 4-hour exam. You just have to be really good at time management. The same thing with outlining. You can do an outline, especially in your case, your essays in these exams are 750 to 1,000 words. You'll have time to outline it, do the proper editing, and to proofread it. You got to pace yourself. Okay. Here again, this when we get down here, we're talking about, well, it's each week in-class assignments will be completed for a total of 30% of the final grade. We've already talked about that. Don't worry, today's assignment isn't going to be graded. That's going to start on the next class on Monday. Today's assignment that I'm going to have you do in a few minutes is really just for me to get an idea of what programs you're in and to get an idea of what level of writing you're at, okay? But after that, yes, the total for 30%, we should be having one every class. Maybe sometimes I'll give you 2 in a class. Be prepared. The accumulation of all of them will constitute 30% of your final mark. And they are to be done in class. So you'll see I'm going to experiment a bit today because I'm going to put a timer on it. All right, so that hopefully that'll work. I've never done that before, so this will be the first time. Again, the evaluation criteria, well, it also depends on what the nature of the question I'm going to be asking you is, or questions. Okay. Midterm exam, we talked about it. It's worth 30% of your final mark. It should be a 4-hour exam in class. Okay. Let's go up here. And then same thing with the final, 1,000-word essay, the midterm, 750 to 1,000. Those of you who've had me before know that I'm not too much of a stickler for word counts. One of the things I don't like is I don't want to see you counting words in the exam room, because that takes away time from you doing the important stuff, okay? You want to keep it generally within those parameters. All right. The thing you have to be careful about if you're writing a lot is that you're not repeating yourself, right? And this is where the editing comes in. Repetition, unnecessary, detrimental to your grade. Okay, the redundancies. You don't need to tell me things 2 or 3 times. You just need to tell me once. And wordiness is another thing that you have to be careful of if you're writing a lot. Less is often more. Get to the point. Those of you who've had me before know my blackboard analogy, but I don't have a blackboard here, so it's not as effective. But if you're going to describe a blackboard, if a blackboard is relevant to what your essay is talking about, it's a blackboard. It's not a beautifully rectangularly shaped, gray-hued apparatus that is sitting so perfectly centered on a gray-hued wall in the TAV building on DeCarry. That's wordy. It's a blackboard. Okay? Keep that in mind. Wordiness is detrimental because your audience, if it's too wordy, is going to tune out. Okay? And very different between being wordy when you talk and being wordy when you write. Writing needs to be clipped, academic, concise, and precise. Okay? So here, this is again, just repetitive, 30% for the in-class reading, writing assignments. 90 to 120 minute, that's just how long the classes are. Accurate reading of the text assigned, summarizing main points. It could be any of these things. It all depends on what I'm giving you. Midterm, we know, is going to be a 5-paragraph essay. Final exam is going to be a 5-paragraph essay. Okay? Creativity of presentation, observation standards specific to the object, blah, a lot of blah, blah there. Okay? Look it over. I will be talking about this and refining the language here very clearly in terms of what is expected in your essays. Okay? And here's the texts. Relevant articles and class handouts, I will be posting on Omnivox, perhaps some articles, documents, PowerPoints, things like that. Those of you who know me know that I'm not big on PowerPoints. I've had to learn to become much bigger on PowerPoints last semester. You will have PowerPoints. PowerPoints will not be posted in advance. Whatever PowerPoints I have are going to be used, I will be going over in class. And then they'll be posted on OmniVox afterwards. Okay? Recommended readings, these are always the ones I recommend. Those of you who are concerned about your writing, these are very good texts to have. Okay, so you can look that over. And then the rest of this is just ministerial stuff. Okay? Any questions regarding the course outline?
No, no. All
We're
is
good.
clear for me.
We're good?
Yeah. Sure.
If when you read it over again, you find some things that are of concern to you, just bring it to my attention, as always. Okay? All right. So again, just a reminder, Monday we meet again at 8:30. I will, starting Monday, have Othello up on the screen, going through it in detail. Please, I implore you, get through Act 1. If you are getting frustrated, if you are getting concerned that you're not understanding it, bear with it, get through it, try to read it a second time, look at the annotations, but get through it even if I've had plenty of students come in after they read Act 1 of any Shakespeare play I've assigned and throw the book down and say, I didn't understand anything that just happened. Okay? That's fine. You will. Make the effort and you'll start to understand it on your own. But if you're not familiar with Shakespeare, do not let your frustration overwhelm you. Know that I will be going over it with you on Monday. And I promise you, it gets easier and easier. By the time we finish Othello, you will be so familiar with Shakespearean language that when we get to Julius Caesar, it's going to go so much smoother. And that's all building up towards King Lear. Okay?
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so what I'm going to try to do now, and this is new, and bear with me. Let's see how this works. Bear with me. So I'm going to our class. I'm going to add an assignment. And choose. All right, so what I'm experimenting with, I've done these assignments for, what I'm experimenting here with is if I can set a timer on it. This assignment will be submitted via Leah. I'm sure most of you have done this. It's going to be posted right now. I hope this works. And I'm going to want you to finish it. Again, don't worry, you're not being graded on this. It's 10:30 now, so we're going to give you half an hour, and then we can call it an early class today. 11. And I'm hitting here, I'm going to refuse late assignments. I have that option, which means you won't be able to submit it after 11. Uh-oh, I'm missing a section. Hold on. What am I missing? Huh. Doesn't it tell me? Must indicate publication date. Oh. Thought I did. That should do it. Ah, okay, got it. Let's try it again. Here we go. Technology. Hold on. I'm going to extend the time. Don't worry.
Are you going to send us by Omnibox or?
Yes, yeah. So this is going to be coming into your assignment folder.
Okay.
Okay. So assignment 1, that's there. I put up the file. It's going to be published now, and I'll give you till, let's say, 11:15. How's that?
Excuse me, sir. Do we have to leave Zoom meeting to do the assignment posted?
I don't think so. I'm on the Zoom meeting and I'm in Omnivox right now. I don't want you to leave the Zoom meeting. So I
how
want
do
you,
we go to the?
if you, okay, hold on. Let me submit this to see if this works.
I think
Nifty, just open
Yeah, I
the
think
new
I think you can just open another window. I mean, I have multiple windows open.
Okay. Okay.
So this is why I want to experiment with this now.
Yeah.
because when I go to Omnibox, it says communication error.
Yeah, we may have a problem because I'm getting the same error. This is Omnivox, I think.
Yeah, it's a problem from Omnibox.
Oh, isn't that wonderful?
So we're lucky.
They're not lucky. Yeah, it looks like Omnivox is perfectly.
Yeah, it's not working, I think, for now, because sometimes I had that same message when it's not working.
Let's hold on. Let me see. Yeah, it's. I remember we had this problem last semester as well. Technical error.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, that's gonna be fixed. This is annoying. I'm sure you're all horribly disappointed.
Are you going to send the outline?
The outline should be published on your. I put the outline up last week.
Really?
Yeah. If you, I don't know if you can go now, but if you go, it's in your posted.
Because I look for all the. I had many printed, but I didn't see yours.
Did everyone else anyone else have problems finding the outline?
Okay, I'm trying again with
Yeah.
Omnibox.
If you're having an issue with it, because I know I put it up last week. If you're having an issue with it, just contact me and I'll send you an individual copy.
Okay. No, it's Omnibox. It's not working.
It's not working at all.
No.
Look at that. Oh, wait a minute. I just got it back up.
No, it's not working. I cannot access.
Of course, it didn't have the assignment. I miss the classroom. I miss the blackboard.
Me too.
I'm going to try this again. Try this again. Hold on. If it doesn't work this time, well, I'll have an idea of what we can do. Just give it a try.
I think the stories are on all the stories are in one book, right?
No, there's three different books. They're not expensive. They're like $7, $8 each.
$7 or $8 each. Okay. Ah, okay. Thank you.
the books, like, you want to at least the latest by Monday to have all 3 of them, just to be sure, because, like, is the
No,
school
you,
open for us to go pick it up? I just want to know, because, like,
yeah, you don't, all you need for now, for the next 4 weeks, is the Othello.
Othello.
Yeah. Okay, so, I mean, and we're going to get to Julius Caesar in obviously, well, in 5, I think it is. Hold on, I'll check with you in a minute.
because if I don't buy them from the school, can I just go to a random library and just ask someone?
Absolutely.
Like,
Absolutely. Yeah, let me emphasize that. You get this book, you can get it out of the library, you can get it out of, buy it at another bookstore, wherever you can. They're very common, they're readily available. So wherever you get it, ideally, I suggest you get the Signet Classic, the one that I specify, but any version, as long as it's not a translation of it, not an updated version. Okay?
okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, it's up. All right, so try to go into Omnibox. Open up another window and check and see. You should have that assignment in your assignment folder for this course. Are you able to get into Omni? Okay, I got a thumbs up. So Omnibox is running now. You see the assignment. Okay, very good. I like the thumbs up. And it should be self-explanatory, right? Very basic, very simple. But what I'm testing here, I mean, I want to see the assignment for the reasons I already told you, but I'm also testing our system here. I've given you to 11:15. Okay, and that's what this is going to be standard, pretty much in every class. I'm going to post it. You're going to go to it, and it may be sometimes how we're going to end the class. It may be sometimes at 10 o'clock before break. Okay, it's going to be whatever I think is going to be appropriate. But this is what I want us to do. So does everyone see the assignment?
Yeah, I see the assignment here.
Okay.
Now, number 1.
Okay. So
I see two.
then let's do it. Submit it through Omnibox. Okay. I'm going to.
Without leaving some class, right?
I want you to stay in the class. Do it while you're here. That way you can ask questions. I'm going to stay here with you. That way, if there's any problems uploading it, you can tell me. All right? So I'm here until you're all done with it. Once you finish it, and you're sure that it uploaded properly, and you should know that, then we're done for the day. But I really, again, you're not going to be graded on this, so no anxiety. Be as thorough as you can. You've got almost 45 minutes. You got 40 minutes. Be as thorough as you can with this. It's really going to help me, again, 2 reasons. One, I get to see how you're writing, and 2, I need to know your progress because of the nature of this course, right? So I want to know more about your program. So tell me more about your program and tell me why you took it. Okay?
Okay. So we have to use any quantity of words or
Whatever you want on this one.
Okay.
In other ones, I'll give you, if I want it to be a certain length, I'll let you know this. You can write, if you can do it in 40 minutes, you can write me 10 pages. Right now, it's
okay.
wide open for you. Okay, but be attentive to your writing because I'm looking as well at your writing. So don't be willy-nilly just writing whatever you want. Write it as if you're handing it in because you are. So be attentive to the grammar and all that stuff. Okay? Good? I'm going to turn my mic off so I don't disrupt you. And just let me know if you have any questions. Once it's submitted and you're sure it's submitted, we're done for the day. Sorry to interrupt, but someone's asking, should you update it by link or PDF? Can anyone help? Because I don't know what that means. It's pretty basic to upload it, right? I don't care.
Well, you could upload it with Word. It wouldn't change the format because
Okay.
for Google it changes the format and
So
then with PDF it stays the same, but you won't be able to correct it directly on the paper.
okay, for this one, whether it's PDF or Word either is fine for me. But I will look into that for the future ones. I'll probably prefer it to be Word.
Okay.
Okay, because I know how to operate Word PDF.
But in the future, when we're doing our assignment and we send it to you, would you be sending us feedback directly from what we wrote on a separate?
I prefer, that's why I like the Word document, because that way I can put it directly onto your document.
Okay,
All my
so then
comments.
PDF, unless you have a program, you won't be able to.
Yeah, I had all kinds of difficulties with the PDF. I mean, if you only can do a PDF, we'll figure something out. It's not, again, for these, it's because they're not that long and I can write the comments separately, but I would prefer Word if you guys can manage it. But I had difficulty converting. I had to convert some documents to a PDF file and nearly lost my mind. But for this one, any way you want, because again, this is more for me. So I'm not going to give you direct feedback on this. This is more, again, for me to assess where we're at. In the future, we'll talk about it on Monday, but my preference will always be Word. Okay? I'll be right back. 1 second. sorry to interrupt, but just I forgot to mention, I will be holding office hours. As it stands now, I'll be having office hours regularly between 2 and 3 o'clock on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Now, if you have a class during that time, don't worry. All you need to do is contact me and we'll make other arrangements. If you want, and I'll post this so so you all have this on announcements on Omnibox. But the best thing as well, because there may be multiple people during those hours, is to contact me and set a time, 2:15, 2:30, something like that. And if you can't make it during those times, we'll make other arrangements. But just so you know, I will be available for office hours every week. Okay.